All right, folks, here we go again. Today is Sunday. My name is Paul McNeil, also known as Crypto Curator. Welcome to Bitcoin is Freedom. It's a show that I've sort of put together to talk about all things Bitcoin and then some personal development stuff that's sort of mixed in there. Today, I actually have another guest. Style Pigeon is going to be here to help me out. And our discussion is going to be talking about Bitcoin. But also personal development, as I mentioned before. I'm gonna try and open this up with this quote that I have. I sent a tweet out earlier this week. If you guys follow me, you probably saw the tweet, and I put it out there for a reason because it's something that I really am somewhat passionate about. And as we get into this conversation, you're going to see that. But the quote is from Dwight D. Eisenhower, and had you not known that, if you listen to this quote, you probably think I was talking about today. It says that this world of ours, and the audience here is pretty global, I'm sure. So this is the entire globe, right? So the world of ours must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. And that's something that we're going to dig into, but we're not going to dig into that right now because that's a doozy of a quote to unpack. But since I got Style Pigeon here, I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him. Some of you probably have already seen him before, but Style, what's up, man?
Oh, not a whole lot, working on everything all at once. So I'm super happy that we get to take this time out of our Sundays to actually have a discussion and dig into some big ideas. I am Styled Pigeon, by the way, just for everybody who doesn't know me. I work on several different projects, specifically with the Bitcoin Live Network. I help co-host a show called Gingerly, where we talk about kind of the basics of Bitcoin, and I ask questions that maybe noobs are thinking, but that a lot of the people who have what we call the curse of knowledge don't think to communicate those things. And John and I on Gingerly, we actually cover a lot of that and have a great time doing it. We like to meander through ideas and work our way slowly through things so that we get the basics down straight, because I'm a believer in the fundamentals. So, and today I think we're going to talk about some cool fundamentals, not just about Bitcoin, but about maybe some life principles and things that hopefully people at home can take and use in their own lives. Even if you just get a little bit of value from this, that will be well worth our time, I think.
Indeed, indeed. So, as I mentioned before, we will talk Bitcoin and we're going to definitely dive into that and individual responsibility. But before we get into the individual responsibility part, I do want to dive into Bitcoin by first asking you, what does Bitcoin mean to you? I think Bitcoin means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but I'd be curious to hear what it means to you.
Yeah, so Bitcoin to me initially was a really interesting kind of like stick it to the man sort of digital asset thing that maybe I thought I could make a bunch of money on and stuff like that. Definitely came from that angle initially. But as I started to learn a little bit more about it, and as I started to evolve as a thinker and as a person, my perspective has changed a lot. So, and this is one of the things that people ask me a lot is actually about trading. And I'll go ahead and clarify up front. I am not a trader. I'm, I don't do well putting myself in situations where my emotions can manipulate me. I avoid those situations at all costs and try to stay really level headed. That's why I'm such a big believer in being an investor instead of a trader. So Bitcoin at that point becomes this really interesting technology that provides a decentralization force for our finance markets. And I look at it as I think a lot about individual sovereignty and the way that that plays out in politics and in government, but or society at large, I guess you could say. But what Bitcoin does for money, I see as what the political system, the political experiment in the US did for societies, or Western civilization, maybe could be a better credit for that. It decentralized everything. We realized that we're supposed to be individually sovereign over our own lives and our own responsibilities. That's the best way that we've been able to find to run our networks of people that we call society. And Bitcoin does that for finance. That's why I'm so interested in it. That's why I'm so invested in it. And I know that you're big tagline is Bitcoin is freedom, right? That's the name of the show. And we can
Mhm.
definitely dive in a little bit more of how I think that technology contributes to what I would call freedom, maybe what freedom is a little bit too. But I'd actually put the question back to you. I'm curious. It's your show, so maybe you don't get to talk about your outright beliefs and thoughts as much because you interview so many people. But I'll throw it back to you. What is it about Bitcoin that you think adds to your life and to the world?
Yeah, what Bitcoin means to me, just like, a lot of people, listen, when I first came across Bitcoin, it was about the money. To be dead
Yeah.
honest, it really was. And when I first heard about it, it piqued my interest. I'm somewhat of a techie guy. I worked in tech, most of my life. I was in the military. I worked on satellite systems and computer communications, all that stuff. So when I came across Bitcoin, and I saw it, of course, number go up is definitely what I was thinking, because I was like, wow, this has the potential to make me a lot of money. And the more that I learned about it, and the more that I read the white paper, and the more that I listened to all the thought leaders in the space, and the more that I've watched the space evolve, it means a lot more to me. I've seen what it's been able to provide for me. And I think it was Anthony Pompliano that actually, it was recently that he started sort of dialing everything back. And he's a big, big advocate of a show called Just in Time, I think it is. It's Justin Timberlake, and in Just Nintime, Just in Time. And he talks about how money is time, and time is the
Hmm.
scarcest thing we'll ever have, because we only get to live for so long, and so that's really scarce. And so he was saying his time is really important, and I got to thinking about that, and I was like, it is true. And I think it's Jeff Booth who says that what we want is not money, we want what money can give us, which is time. And so I've looked
Right.
at it from that perspective. And so for Bitcoin, what it means to me is giving me a lot of time and giving me a lot of autonomy over my life, and giving me, again, freedom. So
That's awesome. That's a
that's
really
my
well spoken answer.
thanks. Yeah. So you were going right into it, and I definitely want to keep going with that. What does it
Hmm.
mean to be free to you? What does it mean to be free?
Actually, I was thinking about this earlier, just kind of getting my mind right for the show and whatnot.
Hmm.
And I keep coming back to actually something that Jocko Willink says a lot. Are you familiar with Jocko?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. I figured, Navy, so at the
Yeah,
very
yeah.
least, and also he's all over the place. But he always says that discipline equals freedom, and discipline is actually something that I'm really bad at. I typically am a person who, if I want to do something, I do it, which works out really well if you're trying to pursue, a hobby or something that you're passionate about. It's a nice way to be able to find those things because you just think, oh, I feel like doing this, and so I'm going to look into it. But at a certain point, the dopamine and everything gets on top of you, and you actually, by not disciplining yourself, you let out the reins on your control over yourself and your life. Well, if you don't have control, that's actually a lack of freedom. So freedom to me is comes down to individual sovereignty and taking responsibility for yourself plus a little bit. And that's kind of how I think about it. Again, not very good at these things. I just think about it a lot. So I think about it as I want to be responsible for me completely, and then a little bit more, and that little bit more tends to grow over time. That's why I moved into management, is because I want to pick up the biggest load that I can carry and carry it, because that's where I experience that freedom of time. The more that I seem to take on, the more I seem to spend time doing the things that actually want to do, by taking the reins myself and living in that idea of freedom as a discipline and a responsibility, as opposed to uh, a teenager's idea of, oh, when I move out I get to do whatever I want, I can stay up as late as I want. That's not freedom. That's letting your mind and your inner monkey just run away with you. So that's kind of how I think about it, and that's why with Bitcoin specifically, that's why I stick to more of a DCA type strategy, the dollar cost averaging, is because that's my discipline. Is I put a little bit in each day, and I understand, because of my ability to conceptualize time and the future, that will build and grow. And in the future Taylor or future Pigeon will thank now Pigeon for doing some of that DCA work.
I tell you, I really love that answer, and it's for several reasons. You hit on so many points, and all the things in my head I can't even unpack them on this show. But
Sorry.
one of the things that you said is so true. And if you've ever read Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Dr. Covey talks about this concept. And this is where people can be effective, is when they focus on their circle of influence instead of their circle of concern. Listen, if my circle of concern is helping the children in Africa and doing all this other stuff, there's multiple things that I could be concerned about, but there's only certain things that I can actually do something about. I love what you said, because you said, let me handle me first. And once I can do that, as that grows, right? So I'm building in my circle of influence, what I can do for myself, what I can do for those people around me. And as that grows, as I can be able to take on more and more, my circle of influence will eventually grow to cover my circle of concern, or maybe even larger. So it's really, really interesting looking at it from that perspective. And when I look at freedom, for me, it's sort of the same thing. I have learned that I want to thank you. Our producer is on the ball. Love
Oh
it,
my gosh,
Nick.
he's
He is
amazing,
all
right?
on this. He is money in the bank. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. That's the image. But when I look at freedom, being able to understand, to have enough time, right, to be able to do the things that I need to do. And the other thing that you mentioned, and you didn't mention it this way, you have the ability to be patient. People don't know how to be patient. You say, listen, I DCA, realizing that I'm putting a little bit in each day that the future Pigeon is going to reap the benefits of, but that's because you're incredibly patient and you're disciplined. You're disciplined to do it every day, and you're patient to wait. People in this world, we're both of the, we are undisciplined and we have no patience.
It's so
So
true.
it's
It's so true, and it's so sad too, because I feel like, I'm 33 years old, so I'm a millennial technically, and so I definitely consider myself to be a part of that generation. And I really feel like, being brought up in the 90s, we were fed all of these lies about the self-esteem culture and you're perfect just the way you are and all of this, but that's not true. You're not perfect as a teenager. You have places to go, you have things to learn, you have competence to gain, and that stuff takes time. That you have to actually put in the work that's involved with growing and becoming an actual person, instead of this, caricature of a person that you tend to be when you're a teenager, or maybe even in your early 20s, or maybe for some people in my generation still to my age. People just don't know who they are because they haven't taken the time and put in the work to figure that stuff out. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I think a lot and do little. That's actually my current project, is to become more of a doer than a thinker. And that's why I'm jumping into all these different projects. If you've followed me on Twitter, it's at Style Pigeon, by the way. If you do follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I'm involved in all sorts of random topics. It's just because that's the things that I want to do. I want to do a bunch of different stuff. And Bitcoin's actually one of the things that's taught me to be a doer through that DCA principle. That's kind of the effect that Bitcoin's had on my life, I think.
Yeah, no, and I think as we continue to go through this conversation, we're going to see that this is why people get so excited about Bitcoin, specifically, I think libertarian minded type people, is because the
Mm-hmm.
impact Bitcoin can have on your life in so many different areas. And initially, you might think, Bitcoin didn't have anything to do with me. But as you begin to think through it and unpack it, you're like, wait, yeah, Bitcoin did influence the way that I think about this. Yeah, so it's incredible. Um, with that, I'm going to jump off of the personal development stuff a little bit, but I do want to ask you a
Please.
question. Most people, this is when we start talking about Bitcoin digital assets, comes up all the time. But do you think the bottom is in? And I want you to sort of answer why or why not. And Nick, you can put up the article from Cointelegraph, because this one is talking about this. And this has been an ongoing conversation that's been in the media for a while. Everyone's trying to determine if the bottom's in or not. I'd be love to get your take on what you think.
I hope, man, I really like this question. Number one, uh, because I have a really sassy answer to it. I said earlier that I like hearing myself talk. I I don't care or think that it matters at all. If the bottom's in or not does not matter to me whatsoever. I don't think of it in terms of cost or price. I think that that's actually a poor way to think of the value of Bitcoin. Uh, and don't get me wrong, if people are traders, go for it. I hope you make crazy good gains and benefit from that long term. That's what I want for the people who do that, is to figure it out and really have a system in place, stay disciplined about your trading strategy, and make it happen for yourself. Totally want that. But I am awful at predicting pricing and predicting all of that. That's why I'm not worried about many other cryptocurrencies and things, is because I'm, like I said earlier, I'm not a trader. I'm an investor. I believe in Bitcoin and the technology that Bitcoin is, as well as I actually really like Stacks as well and what they're doing, building on top of Bitcoin. But that's the stuff that I'm focused on. So price ultimately doesn't really matter to me. And whether or not the bottom is in doesn't really affect my strategy at all, because the way that I have things set up in my world is I don't have to be concerned with what the price is today. I'm concerned about what the technology can do for society in the future. So whether or not the bottom
Yeah.
is in, I have no idea. You'd have to ask somebody smarter than me.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant way to look at it. Mark Yusko says that Bitcoin is the best savings technology. It's exactly what you're talking about, DCA, and right. And this is what I believe as well. And I've tried to tell a lot of people that even with all the crap we've had going on with especially CFI and the contagion it's caused and how many lives it's wrecked, I tell them the great thing about Bitcoin is that it's incredibly forgiving, right? Bitcoin has a forgiveness that almost nobody can believe because Bitcoin's trading around 20 grand. And if we look at the number, I mean, the equation that Robert Breedlove talks about, and I say this all the time, 21 million fixed supply plus massive demand equals number goes up. So let's just say you are someone who is wrecked. I mean, totally wrecked from the CFI. Keep stacking sats today, and you're going to make that and some. So you'll recover in an incredibly short amount of time, because I think that this could easily happen within the next 5 or 10 years. And some people may say that's a long time. It's not long, it's short. Short amount of time, you're going to be okay. So, like you say, it doesn't matter if the bottom's in or not. Rather you're buying it, DCAing it right now, rather you're DCAing it if it goes back to 10, rather you're DCAing it if it's at 50. You're still being consistent, disciplined, and patient. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's what
That's
all
what I
the
think.
best investors say over time, right? My co-host on Gingerly, John, wrote an article quite some time ago about his strategy and whatnot, and how he is kind of copying some of Warren Buffett's approach to investing, by just putting your money where your mouth is and leaving it there. And that's the strategy that Warren Buffett used to make all of his gains. And granted, once you have a certain amount of capital, the game definitely changes. But if you want to become an investor, Bitcoin's a great place to do it because of how incredibly solid the technology is. We don't have to guess, because we understand the technology enough and we understand the world enough to know that this is about the safest bet that you could possibly make.
Yep.
And
Incredibly
not
safe.
a financial advisor, by the way. Just friendly reminder.
Exactly. No, no, yeah. So I do want to talk about a few of the trending news items that were out there in the media this week. As most people might know if they follow me or look at my blog, I post a blog out there every day. And then on Saturday, I do a recap. And so this is from that recap. And what I attempt to do with the recap is to look at the news that got the most coverage. Some publications will post an article, and that's the only publication that talked about it. Other topics get posted literally in every publication: Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, News BTC, BitConnect. I mean, literally everybody talks about it. So that's what these are. So I'd be curious to get some of your thoughts on this. But Monday of this past week, the trending news of the day was about the lawyer Roche, who was making false claims about Ava Labs. And I don't know if you were tuned into that or not, or if you have any thoughts on it. And some of this you might, and some of it you might not, which is fine.
Well, I would actually love for you to lay the story out briefly for me because I don't follow much of this, and this is actually why I follow you. To be perfectly honest, is because you do such a great job curating news for crypto, and I actually really like the idea of curation. You know, Twitter doesn't do a very good job of the curation itself, and really no social media platforms do. So we genuinely need people like yourself to be able to handle all of this. It's not an easy job. I really respect the heck out of you for being able to juggle all of it and bring it to us in a way that's nice and simple. So tell me about the lawyer, and I'll let you know where my brain goes with it.
Sure, sure. So this lawyer Roche, and I think his name is Kyle Roche, if I pronounce his last name correct, Roche. He made some claims about Ava Labs that apparently he says were false due to intoxication. He claimed that the recordings were set up by a third party to discredit him and the firm that he was with, but the whistleblowing website, which reported this story, is sticking by their story, saying that he, in fact, did. It says statements and this was Roche's sort of feedback. And he says statements in the video are false and were made through deceptive means, including a deliberate scheme to intoxicate and then exploit me using leading questions. He said that nobody on his team, on the executive team, and the whole group basically didn't look to him for advice outside of a few small matters. Now, apparently, I guess some of this had to deal with Tether. It had to deal with I'm trying to think of the other firms as well. There's a couple other firms that was involved with it as well. But it appears that this whole thing sort of blew up on him. Iman Gunsour is the CEO of Ava Labs, and so he was saying neither him nor anybody of his team ever reached out to them. And I'm trying to get to the part where they were actually talking about actually what was said by Roche. Oh, I know the ones that were suing was Solana, Binance, Buybox, BitMEX, KuCoin. All of them
Mm-hmm.
were supposedly being involved in the situation with them. So it says things that discredit crypto links. That was the website that reported on this, and just talking about how they report bad information. But it was a complete debacle on I guess his firm, him going on to this interview that he did with crypto leaks, I believe, and just everything against it. So
Yeah, and I think that this speaks to something that's very important. And you and I spoke briefly about this via on the phone. Um, is people in today's society have a tendency to not be as careful with their words as they should be. Um,
mhm.
I don't know why that is. I think it's because we've been so analytical for so long that we've forgotten the genuine impact that our words have. I'm reminded of the ancient deity. I think it's Marduk or Marduk,
Mhm.
who had eyes all the way around his head, and he spoke magic words. And the whole idea of this deity is to represent some degree of an ideal, so he can see everything, right? Which is very important in life, is to be able to see what's going on and acknowledge the factual evidence in front of you. That's sort of the analytical thing. But he also speaks magical words. And this is a
Mhm.
theme that you see throughout religions and mythologies, is the power of words and language. And so it sounds like this person, Roche, probably should not have put himself in a situation where he was speaking either falsehoods or truths that he should not have been uh, publicly acknowledging. Now, generally, when it comes to truth, I have no issue with people publicly acknowledging truth. I believe in speaking the truth. I consider truth to be my highest value. But sometimes we can speak out of turn and we might not know what the truth is. And in that
Mhm.
circumstance, it's better not to say anything at all. And I think that
Yep.
probably from what I've heard, this whole issue could have been avoided completely, which isn't great for the news websites if they avoid that. But, uh, it could have been avoided entirely if the speculative and potentially falsehoods weren't being spread by Mr. Roche to begin with, intoxicated
Yeah.
or otherwise.
Yeah, so it said that the report alleged that the two parties made a deal talking about, I think, FTX and Avalabs, that saw the law firm granted hundreds of millions of dollars in Avalab stock and AVAX in return
Mm,
for pursuing a hidden purpose. Many of the prominent individuals also have commented on the case, expressing their concerns. So there was something. And of course, Emin Gunsur came back and said, "How could anyone ever believe something so ridiculous from that particular website, which is Crypto Links?" Leaks, crypto leaks, and was saying that
mhm.
they would never engage in any unlawful or unethical behavior, yada yada yada. So a lot of behind the scenes sort of things that go on behind the scenes that might not necessarily have been true, that sort of deal, or so it
Yeah,
seems.
and again, I'm going to kind of take a 30,000 foot approach here again and mention corruption and how corruption is actually the enemy of society at large. And we see very much corruption in our current society. There's this very prevalent idea that if you can get yours, you should, and it doesn't matter if it's at the cost of others. And
Hmm.
that's not really a good approach. Actually, the most selfish thing you can do is rise the tide for everyone around you. That's actually how you receive the most benefit. And corruption is this nihilistic idea that creeps into our society and allows people to more commonly make behind the scenes deals and these handshake corruption style propositions that uh, we've seen so much of that now when someone says, "Oh, there's corruption here," we go, "Yeah, it's probably true." As a society, we don't have faith in the people who are in positions of authority or responsibility to act according to a certain value system or a certain degree of honesty. We don't have faith that that will happen anymore, and that's really scary to me because I see news articles like this all of the time uh, that just seem so avoidable altogether. Where it's like, well, like if either you adhered to your NDA or you didn't spout falsehoods, then or you weren't corrupt in the background. That's the situation, right? Is people put themselves in the situation where they can't tell the truth because the truth is that they're doing all this shady stuff in the background. Now, I don't know what the truth is. I'd have to dig into that in a really significant way to discover that and ultimately probably just speak to the people involved. But uh, from a news perspective, being someone who receives the news and then has to act on it or do something about it cognitively, uh, I just go straight back to the things that I know are true. Some people are corrupt. We have to root out that corruption if we want to maintain society and keep everybody, fed and safe in their body in their homes. We have to maintain that level of faith and weed out that corruption so that we can have faith in our society and what we're doing.
Yeah, I think what happens inevitably, and this is the hard part when you're looking at individual responsibility, is that if everyone operated from a perspective of, empathy and said, "Hey, listen, let me put myself in the other person's shoes before I do something," then I think a lot of the things that we see that happen in crypto that aren't of the good nature or of the wise nature is that we'll find out that, it could be avoided, but it comes at a cost for either that person to take that they normally aren't willing to take. And so even if
Mhm.
it's Kyle Roche, or even if it's Amin Gunsur, even if it's FTX, or if it's any of these people, if they operate saying, "I really know what the truth is, and I know what the real deal is, and even though it's going to cost me to be honest, I'm still going to be honest in the situation and say what is, the right thing," because that's the tough part we're finding in the world today, including with politics, is that you find people that are willing to either push agendas or say things that aren't true because it benefits them in some shape, form, or fashion.
Are you familiar with Alexander Solzhenitsyn?
No.
Okay, so Alexander Solzhenitsyn was actually in a gulag during the Soviet Union, and he wrote a book that's largely credited with being the primary piece of literature that was able to bring down the Soviet Union and that system of tyranny that they had. One of the things that he did in that book, or the kind of the purpose of that book, which I think he wrote while he was in the gulag, he had to actually like memorize it in blocks and then reassemble it after the fact. I think is the history. Don't take that to the bank, but I remember hearing that anecdote about him, which I thought was incredible. But he said that the reason that the Soviet Union happened, the reason that that tyrannical system happened, was at the root caused by the fact that all of Russia, all of their society, agreed amongst itself that they would lie to each other. They were okay
Wow.
with lies. And that led to them not taking responsibility for their own actions because it was somebody else's job to take care of that. And they lied about certain truths, like the fact that the situation that I'm in is not caused by me, it's someone else's fault, and there's nothing that I can do about it. That's a lie, right? And so they had all of these societal level lies that crept into their society. And he, from the gulag, while he was in a concentration camp or a labor camp, uh, took the standpoint of, I am fully responsible for my situation and where I am. I'm going to take on this responsibility. I'm going to wear it with pride. I'm going to carry this burden and do something about it. And that single person, a single person having that attitude, was one of the largest contributors to the fall of the Soviet Union.
Hmm. Wow. I
Which
didn't
is
know that.
just,
I'm going to have to look more into that story.
it's a really difficult book to get through because it's surprisingly dark. As it should be, because Alexander was a serious person when he was writing this. He was very uh, he wasn't interested in adding any one-liners or jokes into his writing. He's writing about very serious topics, so it's a little bit thick, but I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you just get the clip notes or whatnot, it would be worth it. Cliff notes, excuse me.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get at too. And I've mentioned this before on Twitter a lot. Is that I tell people I have two words that'll solve all the problems of the entire world globally, it's
Mm,
hard, but it's individual responsibility. And like you said, that one single
yeah.
person probably came. And it is, if each of us decided that we were going to do the wise thing, and that's not the right or wrong thing, it's just that this is the wise thing to do. I think we would see a drastic shift in society and a drastic shift in the way people even treat themselves. Because if I treat you, as Dwight D. Eisenhower said, with mutual respect, trust and
Hmm.
mutual respect, that goes a long way. And again, if with this roast story, if everyone treats each other with trust and mutual respect, I think at some point someone will say, that was my fault. That's on me. I'm sorry. I'm going to take the blame for that. And again, I'm not a fan of lawsuits. Listen, yes, in rare situations, maybe you really got to push for a lawsuit. I think people jump to lawsuits way too fast. And it's like you got to learn when you need to sue, when you don't. We just saw this happen in crypto with BitBoy, right? Listen, I
Hmm.
think people just get sued happy and they just want to sue everybody for stuff. It's like you can't sue people for everything, but apparently maybe you can.
Well, I wonder how much that comes from specifically this responsibility issue, right? Because what a lawsuit is it's handing off the problem to the government or to a judge, saying, here, you determine what's right in this situation. It reminds me of the story of Solomon and the two women with the baby. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to call that story, but the story of Solomon,
Right.
where he offers to cut the baby in half and give each woman who claimed to be the mother one half as an even proposition. Uh,
Right.
and obviously, the way the story works out is the actual mother says, no, 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 she can have the baby, while the
Yep.
vindictive party in the lawsuit in this case was like, no, let's split it down the middle. And that's how
Yep.
Solomon eventually determined, being the wise king that he was, determined that this lady is clearly the mother of this child, and is willing to take responsibility by being like, no, I will sacrifice what I want for the benefit of this child. And we have, in the story, if you bend the idea just a tad, you'll find that the child is many, many different things. It may be a
Mm-hmm.
business. Maybe you and I are in a partnership business wise, and I come to you and I say, this is my grievance. I think we need to take this to court, and we're going to split everything down the middle. And you go, look, I don't want to destroy what we're doing here. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't we come to some reasonable solution and go from
Mm-hmm.
there? And people aren't willing to take the higher road in that circumstance and say, you know what, we're some things are bigger than my petty grievances or my squabbles with Paul over this business deal. I need to be focused on larger things, but I can't focus on those larger things until I take responsibility for what I already have control over. Sorry, that was a little
Exactly.
rambly. I apologize.
No, it was good because it brings up to the next trending news that came out on Tuesday, and this was
Mhm.
about, and I'm gonna completely butcher his name, Democratic representative from Illinois. I think it's Krishnamurti Raja. He actually is calling on crypto exchanges and regulators to account for fraud and scams in crypto. And this is one of the things that I again find just blows me away. Elon Musk is going through with Twitter, right? You look at LinkedIn, you look at Instagram, you look at all these platforms, they're riddled with scammers, they're riddled with things. It's like, why aren't they held responsible to block this stuff and cut this stuff out of their platforms? I'll tell you why, because it goes counter to what they're trying to do. I need my numbers high. I need to show that I got traction on my platform, and the bots are making that possible, and the scammers are making that possible. Why in God's name would I cut them out? It's going to make me look bad. Influencers in crypto the same way. A lot of influencers has a quote unquote a lot of followers. This is one of my beefs that I have with these platforms. Yes, you might say you have 1 million followers, but those 1 million followers are not true 1 million followers. A lot of them are fakes and bots. Why don't you cut all that out of your followership, which you have the tools to do so? It's counter to what I'm trying to accomplish. I get paid on the fact that I look like I have 1 million followers. So why would I want to reduce that number? It's called that's the wise thing to do, but most people won't do that. Why? Because it's economics. Now you're hitting my pocketbook. I'm not gonna cut that stuff out.
Right. And I wonder. So I wonder how you feel about the effects of capitalism at large on that, because so in my mind, I have no problem with somebody trying to make a buck. I think it's on the
No.
individual to say, this is clearly somebody just trying to make a buck. Does it
Mhm.
offer me a buck worth of value? Well, okay, I'm
Mhm.
willing to make that exchange. But if it doesn't make a
Mhm.
buck worth of value to me, then I hide them or unfollow them or get rid of them in my feed. It's I consider it my job to curate this, right? I don't
Mhm.
think Twitter cares, so it's on me. This is just like what books you read, what music you listen to, the people you listen to on podcasts or whatnot affect your mind and your uh, entirety in that way. We also have to be careful with social media. What we're ingesting actually matters.
Right. Yeah, no, it really does. It does matter. And again, like I said, and that's why I've sort of decided I'm just going to do that for myself. I'm going to take and remove bots. I'll block them, scammers. I'll get rid of them out of my particular situation so that I know that this is what it is for me. But like I said, I think that as a platform, Twitter could implement some things that could also assist and help with it. Do they have to do it?
Mm.
Absolutely not. Should they do it? I think that there's a reason that they should.
So maybe from the standpoint of capitalism, really what you're
Mhm.
saying to some extent is the smart thing for them to do is to take responsibility and eliminate that. Just like, say, some a platform like Substack or somebody is doing a good job allowing you to curate that for yourself without throwing all of this extra stuff on top of you for you to have to
Mhm.
sift through. Twitter goes,
Mhm.
no, we don't care if you have to sift through that, but in reality, they'd have a much better product if they would just do the work involved in trying to help us out a little bit and go, no, we don't really want that on our platform. That's not what this platform's for.
Yeah. No, can capitalism is looks at capitalism. Yes, listen, we operate in a system where people have ability to make money, and I'm not against making money. I think everyone should make money because the rule is that if you can create value and make a difference, the money's going to come. You don't even have to even look for money. Why? Because you're creating that value. So I believe as long as platforms are creating value, and Twitter does, they create tremendous value.
Mhm.
This is why I use it every day. LinkedIn creates value. That's why I use it every day. So yes, I think that they should continue to let that stuff happen. I just think it would be a wise thing not a right or wrong thing, a wise thing for them to begin to look at this issue and take action on it. And this is why Elon is going through, again, the lawsuit that he's going through with them and the issues he's going through, because he just wants them to be honest and say, okay, guys, tell me how much your platform are scammers and bots. You probably have that number. Just tell me. They don't want to tell him. Why? Because it's going to make their valuation look bad. And therefore, this is back to that money issue, back to the fact that it's going to ding me economically. So I'm not going to tell you the truth, because if I do that, I lose something. And sometimes people have to realize, if we want to have a society that's built on trust and mutual respect, sometimes you have to say, I'll take the hit, because that's just the way it goes. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, my fault, right? My fault.
Yeah.
And so that's what the congressman is trying to say. And a lot of times in crypto, we ding the Democrats for being against crypto, anti-crypto. Here in this particular situation, I have to agree with them. I think that these crypto exchanges and platforms need to look at the fraud and scams that happens on their platform and do something to protect people at some level. Now, again, at the same time, though, I do have a libertarian mindset. If you're going to get on the platform, you damn well better understand what can happen on that platform, and you can get scammed. Just know that that's going to happen. However, I think it's disingenuous if the platform says, we're totally safe and you're protected. Okay, now you're lying to me, and I think I'm totally safe and protected, and then I get dinged. Okay, well, you lied to me. And this is what the people in CFI has an issue with Alex Mashinsky. We're better than the banks. I don't think so, right? You're worse than the banks because you just screwed us. So, you lied to us. But I also listen, I got dinged there, but I understood going in that I could get dinged. And so now that I'm dinged, you don't hear me out there talking about suing Alex Mashinsky. Why? I knew what I was getting into. I knew I'm gambling. I'm taking a risk. I'm playing crazy. Not your keys, not your coins, people. That's just the way that it is.
Yep.
But, I assume you're not your keys, not your coins guy. Yeah, you subscribe to that philosophy, I assume.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't think even it's really necessarily a philosophy. I think it's just kind of factual. And we can try and put legal systems in place to buffer that to some extent, where it's like, like this is not technically your coin, but you do have some legal right to that coin because you put the coin in, right? Like, and they should do something to give it, to try and make sure that comes back to you at some point without necessarily having any major issues. Just like if I go to the bank, I want to be able to withdraw my funds because they're my funds, even though I'm letting the bank hold that for me. Now, eventually, and this is actually something that I find really interesting, specifically with the Dwight D. Eisenhower quote about trust, is eventually I'd like to see us not eliminate trust from the system, but I think Bitcoin has the effect of making trust somewhat irrelevant as it pertains to the actual system itself. Now, obviously, trust in society, as far as, you come over to my house for a barbecue and I don't poison the food because you trust me not to poison the food, right? That still will have to be there. And there's some truth of trust in the way that that's developed, and how to properly trust others, with the understanding, exactly like you said, that sometimes you get burned. You have to be strong enough. You have to be in a fortified position enough not to have that lack of trust destroy your position. But it's just going to happen sometimes. And there's definitely a fine line that we can walk there between total, like, you're on your own, and total nanny government control. There's a spot in the middle that I'd like to find.
Yeah. And I think that's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin takes sort of trust out of the equation, because that's what Satoshi Nakamoto said, right? He says, this is a system that if you have bad actors operating into it, you're still going to be okay and safe, right? Why? Because the system itself is going to take care of those bad actors by the way the system is built and set up. And so you've created an environment that even if you have bad actors in that environment, you, for the most part, still will be safe operating in that environment, which is incredible because it's something we haven't had before. And when, especially in the digital world, that's paramount. You have to have a system like that. And this is why Bitcoin can, in fact, be trusted, is because It's not dealing with you having to depend on and trust me as a third party or as an anonymous individual. We still can do business without us even knowing who each other is and what each other's value system is. It's like Bitcoin's going to make sure you're operating within spec. Never been done before.
Right. Preach.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. You know what? I do want to jump down to back to Dwight D. Eisenhower's quote, because again, I think that this is where the crux of this conversation really should be. And if you look at society right now, this quote talks about us becoming, or trying to avoid becoming, a community of dreadful fear and hate. And that was one of the questions that I had for you. If you sort of had to gauge the current state of our nation, globe, so to say, our whole world, what would you say? Would you say that we're in a state of fear and hate, or would you say we're in a state of hope and love?
I would humbly and respectfully to Mr. Eisenhower say that I think that the line between good and evil is down the center of each man's heart. Or woman's heart. Just a phraseology there. I think that we're all capable of good and evil, and that the two dichotomies, right, fear and hate versus trust and respect, exist simultaneously. And I think that's okay. It makes it confusing, but I'm okay with it. If that's what the truth is that they exist simultaneously, then that's the paradigm we need to operate within. And I think that it's a series of these micro decisions that happen throughout the day. And that's when I come back to responsibilities. I have to take responsibility for my micro decisions. I'll give you a great example. And I don't think you know this about me yet, but I actually smoke cigarettes. It was a horrible decision. I actually work in pharmaceuticals too, so I know exactly why and how it's so bad, right? Like I don't know why, but for whatever reason, my ability to create habit change and properly discipline myself has not yet defeated the nicotine addiction. And so that's a decision that I make that's harming future styled Pigeon, right? And I know it is, but for whatever reason, I have a really hard time making that decision. And that would be a great example of where I give into fear and hate, because I started smoking because I hated myself, and I've continued to smoke because I'm afraid of not having the next cigarette. And I haven't figured out how to get myself out of this cycle yet. Now, I intend to one day. I think it's a matter of acquiring the proper amount of discipline and competence. I plan to quit smoking one day. I don't want to die from smoking. But if I were to make a decision about, say, what I eat, I tend to treat myself with trust, because I know enough about nutrition to identify what's good and bad for me. And I treat myself with the respect and love and compassion enough to say, no, I don't want to necessarily subject you to this particular vein of thing. I'm not so addicted to sugar or food that I intake those bad things. So it's a balance. And I think that maybe Dwight was doing a really good job of encouraging people to make those positive decisions while making perhaps a little bit of an overly axiomatic statement. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I think his angle at that is sort of, again, state of society as a whole, maybe not necessarily specifically individuals or habits. I think he's looking at it saying, and I think this happens a lot in crypto, and I think this happens a lot with people individually too. I think what happened is that it's so easy to be negative. It's easy for me to talk about, oh, did you just see there was a shooting down the street and blah, 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 blah. Someone wants to hear that, or we think someone wants to hear that. So we layer on. It's hard to look away from a train wreck. If I'm sitting here and I watch a train come down the street and it hits a car, who's just going to turn around and go the other direction and just have a good day? Everybody's going to be talking about the train wreck. And so as society, I think we get ourselves in, especially as the world, and right now with the political environment that it was globally, COVID and all this other stuff going on, and conspiracy theorists, and also we begin to lean into that a lot more than we lean into hope and love. And you know, can we be okay? Will we be okay? We can handle this. It's gonna be all right. And to give ourselves that ability to think that way versus the Fed's gonna F us again, or you know, the government's coming down as, oh, you know, we it's like, guys, we can get this done. We just have to believe
Mm-hmm.
in each other, trust in each other, and work together. Here's the thing: if I asked half the people on crypto Twitter, the Jeff Boots of the world, the Mark Mosses, the George Gammons, guys, how do we avoid this economic collapse? Rarely do you get a lot of answers. Most of those shows, and I'm not dinging these guys and I don't hate these guys, but most of them, they just talk about, oh my God, shit's about to hit the fan. What do we do about it? Well, that's for another show. Or you know, we're not going to
Right.
talk about that. It's like we got to talk about it. And some of them will say Bitcoin's the answer. Okay, if Bitcoin's the answer, what does that mean? It goes to what you said. It means every individual needs to DCA, buy some Satoshis every day, and you're going to be okay. It's as simple as that. But we don't want to do that. We
Yeah.
would rather, yeah.
I'm a little bit fearful, and that's something that runs counter to the way that I would like to be in an ideal situation.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm fearful about is actually all of the things in myself that would lead to that which I fear, right? And I think it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
fear feeding in on itself, right? But like we were talking about, I have to make that choice every day. This is just a choice of mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
I witness it all the time at work. I work at an inside sales place. We make phone calls all day long, and we often make phone calls to people who do not want to receive a phone call from us. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
burdensome and mundane thing to do on a regular basis. But I cannot continue to do it if I give in to the fact that, oh, well, I feel, and this is a direct quote, by the way, I feel like I'm in a dog kennel all day. Well, if you think that way, of course, you're putting yourself in your own mental prison. What responsibilities could you take on near you and say, I'm going to make this one little thing better. I'm gonna change this one little thing. I'm gonna improve this. Every time I'm on the phone with somebody, I'm gonna at least ask them how their day's going. And you know what? If they say they're having a bad day, I'm gonna say, man, I hope your day gets better. That's that little bit of positivity. And you know what? If nothing else, I got to make that person's day slightly less awful. And I agree with you that we should definitely move towards that. That's the only way we're going to avoid the uh, catastrophic issues that a revolutionarily advantaging technology like Bitcoin brings to the table. It's just like the Industrial Revolution, right? It's an Industrial Revolution level technology where the Industrial Revolution completely revamped the way that we educate, the way that we work, the lifestyles that we lead. It revamped all of it. And there were some real sketchy spots in there. If you've ever heard of the Great Depression, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there was starvation, there was economic collapse, there was all these things that happened because of this revolutionary technology and the tug of war between technological advancement and conservatism, and the people that were caught in the middle of that couldn't figure out what to do because they were fearful, because they were hateful of you think this, so I disagree with you, and therefore you're morally abhorrent, and now I can hate you with justification. No, we're all people. We're all very, very close genetically. We're all basically the same thing. We all live on the same planet and experience generally the same stuff every day. Um, my heart pumps blood through my body basically the same way that almost everybody else's does. And I have to treat those other people like they are an extension of me, because the rising tide rises all ships, or raises all ships, I should say. And that's the
Yeah.
most selfish thought you can possibly have, but it's also the one of the wisest. Um, at least that's my
Yeah.
take on it. 33 years
It,
old
it, it go, Yeah, it goes back. It goes back to individual responsibility. And there, I heard her saying,
every time.
Wise man once said, if you want a better world, then you got to have better countries. And if you want better countries, you got to have better states. And if you want better states, you got to have better cities, communities, families, individuals. It starts with us as an individual. Listen, if I'm doing the things that I need to do for me and my family, then that's going to be great. And then as my circle of influence grows, then I can start doing things in the community, right? Well, here's this guy who, was somewhat, again, nobody's perfect, but here's someone
Sure.
who can manage their depravity well enough that they can be effective with themselves, and they're effective with their family, and now they're being effective in the city, and then they're being effective in the community, and they're being effective now in the state, and they're being effective global, in the country globally. The thing is I think a lot of people, and what you brought up is true. A lot of what we deal with today is driven by fear, and what cures fears is action. The moment I'm scared of something, then you should do it. Here's the thing I had once was, people talk about it, and it wasn't necessarily true for me, but people that I went with. But we went skydiving, and this one girl said, the reason that I'm going skydiving is because I'm so fearful of heights, and I want to get over that. And she did it by actually skydiving. And when she was on the ground, she was like, I don't think I'll be afraid of anything else in my life. And what people don't believe, and you don't believe this, but if you go skydiving, I would be willing to say you'd stop smoking. And I'll tell you the reason why. And it sounds crazy, but you're going to realize something at a level that words will not be able to tell you. Only action can tell you. When you experience that, you're going to scratch your head and say, you know what? What are you going to be afraid of? Here's the thing, guys. We can do whatever it is we want to do. We have that ability. If I really, really, really didn't want to eat meat anymore, I guarantee you I could be a vegetarian tomorrow. The problem is that I probably enjoy meat. So this is going to make it incredibly hard for me because it's something that's bad for me, but I love it. As long as I love it, I'm going to have a hard time until I can see that as truly being bad for me. I'll always do it. Doesn't matter. And it's true.
Yeah.
And even in crypto, the way we view our government is so hateful, and we're always going to want to get rid of it. But here's the thing. I bet you if you get enough smart minds together and people that really care, guys, let's admit it. This is so unpopular. There are some good politicians out there. They really are. They are good people, and they try really hard to work and do things right. But we will never give them credit. It was John, I think it was John, I'm gonna forget his last name, Daily Show guy, John, I don't know, forget his last name. Sorry, John. But
I
it
can
was
never remember it
John,
either, actually.
yeah. It was John who was talking about, he said, you know what? We have people up on Capitol Hill that go to work every day, busting their butts trying to get things done. Congress as a whole might have a horrible rating, but there are people that work hard. What we have to start doing is asking one question, and I would challenge all of my listeners, don't care what country you're in, this is what you should be asking all the time. How can I help? That's what you should be asking. Instead of us complaining and going crazy, keep asking people around you, hey, how can I help? Is there anything I can do to help? The reason we want to ask that question is because someone's going to give us something to do and we don't want to do it. But if I ask folks in my family, hey, what can I do to help you out? Instead of screaming and yelling at them and talking about the issue, no, let me just ask you, how can I help you out? That will transform everything and you'll see things get better. It's fear. We don't want to do it because we're fearful. So I don't know.
I can actually even take it a step further. I can take it a step further for you, because I think in the workplace, it might even be more advantageous to not ask, how can I help? You should ask yourself, how can I help? Or and I really like this wording, mostly probably because deep down I'm a pretentious asshole, but Jordan Peterson says it, wherever responsibility has been abdicated, opportunity lies.
Yes.
So one of the ways that I was able to get a promotion at work, and I think this works really well if you're in the corporate sphere or you have a day job or whatnot, which most people do. One of the greatest ways to get ahead in that world is to go, okay, I hear people complaining that like Salesforce, which is a CRM that a lot of salespeople use, Salesforce is not used the same way by everybody in our office. Okay, well, we need an SOP. So, and this is the exact example. This is one of the ways that I got a promotion at work is I saw that. And so I just took 45 minutes out of my day to write up my standard operating procedures for how I use Salesforce. And I just printed it out and I handed it to my manager and said, I think that we need an SOP for Salesforce. So I typed one up. Here it is. You can either use it or you can throw it in the trash. And you know what? The next week they asked me to start taking over training all of the people in our building on Salesforce.
There you go.
Just because I was like, oh, this is some place where something needs to happen and nobody else is doing it. So I'll do it. I'll take care of it. I can do that work because at the very least I can learn how to do that work and then do it.
It's action cures fears every time. And again, if I'm concerned that our world is about to head toward a economic catastrophe, why am I going to worry about it? I don't need to worry. I just got to take action. What is that action? Keep creating value, keep working to make a difference in the world. The money will keep flowing, keep investing that money in Bitcoin. And guess what? I don't have anything to worry about. I'm okay. I tell people this whole situation with the CFI collapse. People lost a lot of money. I lost a lot of money. But guess what? I say, I'm okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to cry about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go create some more value, make a difference, take that, put it back into Bitcoin. I'll be okay. This is the way you do with everything, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's jobs, whether it's your faith, no matter what it is. As long as and there's a book by Susan Jeffers, Dr. Jeffers. She says, always say this, I can handle it. If you ever want to get over anything in your life, just tell yourself, I can handle it. Because if you can handle it, that's the way you get over your fears. I have a fear of doing X. Well, just tell yourself, I can handle it, and then go do whatever it is. Boom. Immediately, you'll start getting results.
It's actually interesting. So in psychology or in clinical psychology, they often discuss voluntary exposure therapy. And exposure therapy as a term got a really bad rap back in the day because they were forcing people to be exposed by things. So like for your friend who went skydiving, they would have taken her and strapped her into a parachute and tossed her out of a plane and called that exposure therapy, whether she liked it or not. That's not effective. What is effective, though, is voluntarily looking at a problem going, you know what, actually, I'm experiencing a little bit of fear in this, and I can't seem to do it. So for myself, and I'm kind of calling myself out on a show, but for me, it's going, can I wait another hour before I smoke that next cigarette? Yes. Can I? Do I think I can? Well, let's try it and see what happens. Okay, well, I experienced some anxiety, but was that anxiety crippling? No. Okay. Maybe, so now I smoke a cigarette. Fine. I lost in that little bit, but now I go, okay, well, what happens if I make it an hour and 15 minutes in between cigarettes? And now, granted, this is easier said than done. But I think that, you never see a painter climbing a ladder that has 4 feet in between the rungs, right? That's right. They build ladders with rungs that are close together for a reason. And we should build our, self-improvement ladders with rungs that are nice and close together, because that's how you climb.
Not only that, what you just said is another thing too. And another mindset to take and shift to take on that is, why am I even thinking about smoking in the first place? Let me get to the root cause of what it is that's got me doing whatever it is. Again, I'll tell people this. I have these 6 buckets of my life that I look at everything through. First is health, both physical and mental health. If I am not good physically and mentally, I'm going to have a problem. And that drives the rest of my entire life. It'll drive money, it'll drive relationships, it'll drive jobs, it drives everything. Then I look at my economics. Okay, how does that look? And then I look at my faith or spirituality, whatever people want to call it, and then relationships, then career and education, and then rest and relaxation. You have to have those things. And so when I'm looking at those things, I always ask myself, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm optimal in all those areas? And if I see something in those areas, then it's hard for me to make that decision, but say, okay, this is something I want. So with my health, I went and got my test done, my physical, got the results back, and the result says XYZ. Okay, now that I know where I am, I need to determine Do I want to take action to make this better or do I not? What could possibly be the outcome? Okay, my family has a bad history of heart health. So I am very sensitive to heart health. So I've looked at all the metrics around it. I've measured everything around it and I'm in a pretty good spot. Okay, if I keep doing what I need to do, then I will not face that. But and here's where fear. It was the fear and concern of me watching how my mother passed and how my brother passed that I said, guess what? I don't want to go that route. So I'm gonna do whatever I can not to go that route. And so I think if we look at some of the underlying causes of why we do some of the things we do, like for instance, I used to drink sodas all the time, but then my doctor says that's leading to you having health problems. All of a sudden, I said, you know what? I'm gonna cut the drinks out. But just like you said, I didn't go cold turkey. I said maybe I don't drink, actual pop anymore. Okay, let's not do that. I still have sweet tea. But then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? The sweet tea has sugar in it. Let's cut the sweet tea out. Let's replace it with stevia. Oh, stevia is a natural plant it's a sweetener. It's not refined. It's not going to cause me health problems. So let's do that. In my coffee, there's monk fruit. Monk fruit is sweet. I still get the sweetness, but I don't have to deal with the bad effects of sugar. Yeah.
Now, what type of coffee do you normally drink?
I drink the Super Coffee. They're actually a sponsor. They're not a sponsor, but they power my show. But it's positive energy because it's made with good coffee, good whey protein, monk fruit, the whole, coconut oil. When these guys put this together, I loved it.
Where do I go to get that?
They have a website. Drink Super Coffee is their website. You can just Google Super Coffee and you'll find it. I had the story I tell everybody, which is it's a fun story. I was part of a group called Next Gen. The associate producer for Shark Tank was in that group. I took a post that he had and I posted it on LinkedIn because he was looking for companies for the show. The CEO of Super Coffee reached out to me. I went down and met with those guys. They gave me some of their coffee to taste. I love that stuff. I connected them and voila, they got on Shark Tank. Now, it was not me. I did not necessarily do anything. Listen, these guys had to be good. Like they say, there's a saying that, whatever Paul touches turns to gold. That's not true. I happen to touch gold. And I am able to tell people about it. These three brothers are amazing. Jimmy, Jordan, and Jake, love them, love those guys. The DeSico brothers, they started that and they've improved, and they are really doing well. But I really do love that coffee for all the things that it stands for. And that is good, healthy coffee, and it provides positive energy. And that's sort of the way I look at it.
So obviously I tossed you the segue just for fun, let you promote your sponsor and whatnot. But it sounds like the Seiko brothers, you said?
DeSico,
it sounds like
DECCS.
DeSico.
Yeah, DeSico.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like the DeSico brothers actually found a place where responsibility was being abdicated and they were actually able to take personal responsibility for building, as you describe it, the gold. And that's what led to all of this stuff. And now not only are they reaping the benefits of the value that they provided financially, I would imagine, they're also actually bringing value to your life because it allows you to have an alternative to the bad decisions that you were making in the past.
Correct.
Which just connects to the show. I just think it's interesting.
And here's the other thing that I think people are so fearful of is that there are alternatives. I tweeted this out once before. There are options. If you go out and ask the average person, what options do you have? And again, and not to get too personal with you, but what options do you have other than smoking? Most people go, I gotta smoke. Okay, but I understand you gotta smoke. But I'm saying, what other option do you have other than smoking? There are other options that are out there. Are you willing to take the other options? And most people go, well, I can't do without. It's like, really ask yourself. And if you really challenge yourself, there are other options that you'll find to whatever vice that you have in life. And everyone has vices. I have vices. We have to ask ourselves, are there other options? And here's another great statement. No for now, not forever. No for now, not forever. Can I say no to myself right now? Doesn't mean I have to forever stop smoking. Listen, there are people that maybe you say, I'm gonna smoke on the weekends. I'm just gonna have a little smoke on the weekend. That's it. Monday through Friday, I am not gonna smoke. But on the weekend, I'm gonna have me a couple of puffs and I'm good. I know there's chemical deals involved with nicotine and stuff like that. I get all that, but I'm just saying that maybe some of these things are options that you can look at.
Well, and ultimately those things are excuses, right? Like, I don't think that it's reasonable to excuse one, including myself, from responsibility, even given chemical addiction, um, because it's still like I still choose to do it, and it is, to be fair, really weird to watch yourself engage in addictive behaviors, like hiding things and like lying to the people around you because of it. And you can, it's really odd to watch yourself do it. If you're good at watching yourself, you can watch yourself make those decisions and go, oh my gosh, like this is scary. This is like some intervention on TV level addictive behavior. Like that's really spooky.
Right.
But but it is also the reality. And you know, it's incumbent upon me to acknowledge that reality and then, like you say, do something about it. Even if it is adding that extra 15 minutes in between. So, and
Yeah,
that's actually the DCA thing for me. So I'll plug really quick Roundly X. Our show generally
sure,
is
sure,
sponsored by Roundly X, and
sure.
Roundly X is helping out the Bitcoin Live Network a lot, and they've actually done a lot to teach me about DCA through John, who handles a lot of their social
We
media
love
engagement and
John.
whatnot. John's amazing, and he's handsome and everything too. You can't beat him. Um, but they've he's been the one that's been pushing DCAing your health in my exposure lately. And it's like, you know, maybe let's say you smoke 10 cigarettes a day. What's it look like if you only do 9? What's it
That's
look
right.
like if you only do 8? And then
That's
in the
right.
Roundly case, what's it look like if, you know, when you go and buy that soda, maybe it's a buck 50, that's 50 cents that you put into your favorite cryptocurrency or something. And then that adds up over time. Same thing with compounding interest and things like that. And the financial, you know, if you want to talk about CFI aspects of it a little bit, all of that flows together. And it's just this common motif that I keep finding in my life since I met Bitcoin.
It is again. You're right with Roundly X. With a lot of the things that we see, if people would just take and do a little bit, just most people they have a, let's just say, a habit vice. They don't want to do anything around that. But if you just chip away at it little bit by little bit over the course of a year, over the course of 5 years, all of a sudden you really have transformed your life, and you're no longer really concerned about what that is. The thing is getting started, and the best way to get started is just to do it. So you say today, let's just do this, right? Let's do a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And this is the power of Bitcoin. This is what Bitcoin teaches us, right? A little bit over time becomes a lot. And that's the beautiful thing about stacking sats that people have talked about, is that you just do it over time and you'll eventually see the efforts compound in a way that just blows you away. And I've done the same thing.
Mhm.
I DC in my health all the time. I make my doctor say, hey, 30 minutes of cardio a day, 5 days a week, 150 minutes is what you need to have a healthy heart. Guess what I'm doing? I'm doing those 30 minutes a day, 5 days. Now, sometimes I don't do 5 days. Sometimes I miss. But I always tell people, when you're starting something like that and you happen to fail, don't punish yourself. Don't get all, just say, let's start over. Let's start tomorrow and we're going to do it again.
How do you handle the process of forgiveness when you fail yourself?
Yeah, so again, I don't take myself too serious, right? I tell everybody this: listen, if you die tomorrow, right? I operate from that perspective. Listen, I could be gone tomorrow. So why am I going to feel guilty and regret and all this other stuff because I didn't do one? As a matter of fact, I'm working with a friend right now. We do a monthly call. Now we sort of do a twice a month call. But the first part of the month, we talk about our goals. Or in this year, I decided to shift from goals to guidelines. So I have these 10 guidelines that I live my life by, to say, if I can do these 10 things, and I do them successfully, I've already calculated up and said that this is going to be a great life. So I have 10
Mm.
guidelines that I live my life by. And if I do these 10 things, I'm good. If I don't do one of them, I say, you know what? That's okay. Start over. Let's go. Let's do it again. And I am very forgiving of myself whenever I happen to fall off the wagon, so to speak, on anything that I'm doing. Why? Because I realize that tomorrow I cannot be here. And so, do I want to live in a state of me being worried or me being depressed about something that, no, I don't. I want to live a life of freedom and joy and happy and be optimistic about things. And so that's the way I look at it. And I try not to get myself so down because I didn't do something. I'm setting the bar. So if I don't necessarily like what I just did, then I make a change and I adjust.
So do you find it, would you say that you would be able to do that? Okay, actually, let me rephrase this completely.
Sure,
I
sure.
find that having an aim or a target is hugely important. Not only knowing where I'm
Mhm,
headed, but knowing where I came from and where I am currently,
mhm,
and then having that
mhm.
target to aim at. Where does that play a role in your practice of discipline?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I always have this thing of, again, and this is another thing I think helps a lot of people. You gotta believe, right? You gotta believe. Listen,
Mm,
if I'm trying to think of a good example for this, but so and to answer the question, I believe ultimately I'm gonna get it done. It might not be in the
mhm,
time frame that I might have said, but I believe I'm ultimately going to get it done. So let's just say I want to save $100 a month, and I don't necessarily save the $100 in February. I just start back over and say, okay, I'll save either try to save $200 in March, or else I'll just push it out to I'm going to do it by February of next year. Right? I'm very forgiving to myself because I believe ultimately I'm going to get this done. I do not I'm not fearful to go, oh, now that I missed 1 month, I said I'm done. I messed up. No, I messed up, but I know that I can get back up. Okay, it's just like riding a bicycle. I get on the bike, paddle two,
yeah.
and I fall over. Do you stop and say, I'm not going to ride the bike anymore? No, you get back, bike back up and you pedal some more. And before you know, you're done three and you're done four. And eventually, you start riding the bike. So I look at myself in all areas of life that way, including my health. Listen, I can be really good Monday through Friday. Come Friday evening, I fall off the wagon, so to speak. And some people call it a cheat day. I probably take a cheat
Mhm.
weekend. But come Monday, I've got the rule set in my mind. No, it's back to doing what you've got to do because you ultimately need to get there. Now, I know that I've got my blood work coming up next month. Guess what? I am going to be on and I'm going to make sure I'm trying to do things I want to get there. And even if I get good results, what I think that's going to do is going to reinforce to me that what you did, that's what you need to be doing. And so next time you think about having that weekend cheat, you might decide, no, I think I'm going to try and push through this weekend. And all of a sudden, it's going to become a habit.
Yeah, I figured out a little bit of this when I stopped drinking alcohol. I don't drink alcohol at all anymore. And I
Mhm.
used to work in manual labor, so alcohol was like every day. I mean, I'd get off of work, head to the hotel room or wherever, and I had a pickle jar, like the standard, buy little baby dill pickles in it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
would fill that up halfway with bourbon, and then fill it up the
yep,
rest of the way with either orange juice or grapefruit juice, and I drink two of those
yep.
every single night. And
Wow.
it was largely to deal with the pain of just turning big rocks into little rocks all day,
Yep.
and the you know mundane nature of doing that, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled intellectually or spiritually or anything like that. So I used alcohol to cope with that, and at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna not do that anymore and see how it feels. And the first weekend was hard, uh, and the second weekend was hard, but the by the third weekend, I was just feeling much more awake than I had in the past. Um, and it was a really interesting thing because I'm not a cold turkey sort of person. I don't normally, like I said, normally when I want to do something, I just do it. That's
Right.
why how I get myself involved in so many big projects by accident, then have to figure out how to fit it into the schedule. Um, so with alcohol, it was just this weird switch in my head, and I wonder if you have maybe your finger on that switch a little bit better than I do, and
Mhm.
if maybe you could uh, tell me how you it seems like you have a logical way of reaching the switch and being able to go,
Mhm.
okay, here's the switch, let's do this, and play it out. Now maybe that switch comes back on at some point, but I know where it's at, I know how to get to it. How do you build that pathway in your mind?
Yeah, no, again, great question. Part of that is through, I think, part of my military training and things that we went
Mm,
to. I've had a lot of, great, teachers and mentors and things like that through the military. And again, that's that sort of mindset that I got from that, including Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, a lot of these books. But it is being able to really quickly forgive yourself about something and then go back and get back to what it is that you need to get to. and finding things to sort of occupy your mind so that you're not necessarily thinking about that from that perspective. And so, again, if I'm trying to accomplish a task and I don't necessarily get it done for some reason, yeah, for me, I go back to that one. I know I can get this done. I know that I am going to get this done. It just becomes a matter of time, and I keep pushing forward. And I don't know, for me, that's sort of the way that I rationalize a lot of the things that I do in my life, including, let's just say, this show. Nick, our producer, he'll tell you the conversations we had about doing this, we went round and round and round about this. And I was like, I don't know. Right. And eventually he says, Paul, why don't we just do one? One is turned into two, it's turned into four, turned into another show, right? So and I'm like, can I get this done? Can I get this done? I was fearful about a lot of this stuff. And like everybody, right? We're our own worst critic. So you have to silence that critic in your head. Tell yourself, I can handle it. Go ahead and do it. Worst that happens is it doesn't pan out the way you thought it would. Okay, you can always go back to do what you was doing before, but let's see what happens. And so I'm more of a trial and error type of a person. I think maybe that's just by nature, by the way that I am, that I just do it that way. So I don't know. That's sort of my deal.
That makes sense, and it makes sense from the fact that it becomes a well-worn groove, right? And that's actually how your brain works, right? The sheath around the nerve in your brain or the neurons and whatnot in your brain actually gets thicker the more you use it, and then it can conduct electricity better, essentially. This is definitely the cliff notes of the biology, but it actually gets stronger, it conducts better, and then that thought becomes easier.
Yeah.
Every single time you have that thought, it becomes easier. And that's, again, something that I definitely need to work on. That's why I have so much enjoyed surrounding myself recently with people like yourself, people who are trying to get better. In the past, I had surrounded myself with people who were nihilistic, people who were pessimistic or cynical way too often. And I've cut almost every single one of those people out of my life at this point, and I'm trying to replace them with people like yourself, people like John, people like Nick, our producer, and the encouragement that I've received from you all, it has been immeasurably helpful to not only my physical health, but also my mental health and my financial health. I'm hoping will happen at some point as well. And it's just been such a huge, I'll say, windfall for me as a person involved in this community. And I know we talk all the time about how sometimes the community around crypto Twitter and whatnot can be a little toxic, but I've actually found it to be exactly the opposite. Now, some of that is curating, right? If I notice somebody spouting negativity all of the time, I just don't pay attention to them because I go, oh, okay, you're one of those people. That's fine. You be that person and be pessimistic in your own world, but I don't have time or effort to put into that. I don't need that energy in my life. Instead, I want people like Crypto Curator and Purple Suede and, Dr. Suss and these people who are just doing amazing, interesting things all of the time. We're too busy now. I'm too busy to do the negative stuff. And that's actually one of the big things that's contributing to me starting to slow down on cigarettes is I don't have time. I just don't have time to go sit outside and smoke.
That's awesome.
Like I'm too busy. So that's been wonderful. So I have to say thank you for doing what you do and all of the work. I know how much work it is because I'm involved in it. I really, really appreciate it.
No, you're absolutely welcome. And I'm gonna tell you this: we definitely are gonna have to do another show because we only touched the iceberg, half of what I think we really could talk about on this topic. Because it is, and I don't want to keep our producer forever. But here's the thing: I definitely want to make sure that we find some time to follow this up because my next question to you, and we won't answer on this one because it's a long question, but is value systems. It's like, how do you create a value system for yourself, and how do you know that that's a good value system and that you're operating into it? But that's one that I definitely want to touch base with you on because, again, I think that this is one of the good things about Bitcoin. It brings folks together, and I think it brings good people, I think, and not necessarily good people, but people, in a good way. Let me put it away. People in a good way. It brings us together so that we can benefit each other and benefit others. And so that's what I get so excited about this community. You're right, on crypto Twitter, I have a blast. I can list 50 people right now on crypto Twitter that I just love crypto, and it's all positive. I don't get a lot of negative on crypto Twitter. The negative stuff I see, and I just let it, like you said, pass on by, and I focus on these relationships. When John first mentioned you, I was like, who? He was like, Style Pigeon. I was like, who's Style Pigeon? And that's all I ever knew. That's why I said I was talking about Style Pigeon. He said it was your cousin. And I was like, oh. So I got super excited because when I met John in DC, we met because of Bitcoin.
Right.
I don't think our paths would have crossed had it not been for Bitcoin. There was no reason for our paths to cross, but we crossed with Bitcoin. I met him, met his wife. I spent New Year's this year with John and in Virginia, had a blast for New Year's. Yeah, it was great.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I actually,
you should have been there. You should have been there.
I live in South Carolina, and I won't dox him, but I had to drive 16 hours one way to visit them for Thanksgiving. And number one, it's the last time as a 33-year-old I'll ever make a trip that long by myself in the car. By the time I got back, so I did it over the weekend. So in 4 days, I drove 32 hours to where they're at and back just over the weekend on a whim. And it was 100% by myself straight through. It was an absolute nightmare. And somehow the like 24 hours that I got to spend with them was totally 100% worth it. Such a blast. Absolutely. And I love that there are so many people bringing light into our lives, and we do it for each other. It's not a one-way street ever. It's never one way. It's always two way as we feed on each other. So that said, I would love to discuss value systems and, how my value systems got destroyed and how I've been building them back, and the system that I use to try and do that. We can definitely do that on another episode. You just, in the words of the great Doc Holliday, say when.
Awesome. Hey, Nick, you heard that. We're getting him back on the show again. It's going to be fun. So, hey, listen, again, thank you so much for coming on. The work that you're doing with Roundly X, with John, with all this stuff, I think it's going to be amazing. Look back a year and to see where you're coming. Maybe many shows, because I think we're going to do many shows. We'll see those things change for you, and it's going to be a lot of fun doing it. So, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, folks, as always, you can find my stuff if you go to thecryptocurator.com. That's my website. That brief that Nick has put up is the brief that I put out daily on Publish 0x. Publish 0x, if you guys don't know, it's a blogging platform. That's phenomenal. And it's for crypto people. Actually, it's for anybody, but you can earn crypto by participating, by blogging, and by interacting with other people's content on there. So it's a really great platform. They have Ample Token and they have Ethereum that you can get. So check out Publish 0x, great platform. And you can check out my blogs while I'm there. Check out my website, The Crypto Curator. Please follow Styled Pigeon. You see it right there on the screen, Styled Pigeon. And definitely follow Bitcoin Live as well. Nick is our producer. Both him and Jan do amazing work behind the scenes. I'm super thankful for them. So follow them as well. Other than that, I think we're done.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Have a wonderful Sunday.
You're welcome.